on the road.
Got
Good
it.
evening and welcome to everyone. Thank you for being here for the October 2023 Hive Buddy Bee Club. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all here. Lots of people dialed in tonight, Carmel, to check out what we're up to. That's normally a good sign.
It is a
And
great sign.
and strangely, quite a lot of them are people that have seen our work before. So I don't know.
And they're
That's
still
it.
rolling in.
They're still rolling in. Now, just a note
Love
for
it.
everybody who's on deck with us tonight and anyone who may actually be watching the recording. It does appear that the wind is blowing tonight and it can wreak havoc with your internet connection. So if it comes in and out a little bit, apologies in advance. That's just the deal, but we're going to be fine. Well, it is wonderful to have everybody here. Tonight is going to be lots of good fun, lots of learning, lots of bits and pieces to talk about. How are you, Carmel?
Yeah, there goes the robot. Yeah, how am I? I'm good. I'm good. I'm busy like a busy bee. But yeah, chugging along.
Well, hearing some people before the show, it sounds like we've got plenty of people pulling honey off beehives nice and early and being absolutely having to work hard early in the season. So that's not a bad thing, but we'll get to that. Of course we will. Now, you would remember just a quick recap from our show last month, for those that weren't part of it. We had our usual update on Varroa and those matters. We talked about the red dwarf honeybees over in Western Australia, a pest that has been found over there. And the good news is I haven't heard any more reports since then, Carmel. So perhaps they've got a lid on that. That's something we don't want to happen here. Last month, we also talked about deformed wing virus.
Yep.
And something for us to be really aware of, even though there is not any current, not that has been reported, any deformed wing virus on bees since the Varroa incursion, but it's something we want to be thinking about. So if you perhaps weren't joining us last month and you think maybe I need to learn a bit, get back and see the recording from last month because we started to introduce that topic. Last month, you took us through a huge presentation around queens. And it was absolutely astonishing how much we could learn. And at the same time, it really only scratched the surface, but it was a really good kick-off for those that are feeling new in that space and still trying to figure it all out. And we obviously had some quirky bits to talk about last week, and one of those was the relationship between bees and electricity.
As always. Buzz, buzz.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and there was a lot more we discussed too, but that was sort of the general way it went. So, I should mention that tonight is sponsored by the Hive Buddy 2024 calendar.
Oh, can't wait. Can't wait.
And I realise there's probably plenty of people here that have no idea what I'm talking about. Well, last year we put out a lovely calendar. Here's a bit of an example. Hopefully that's what you're seeing on your screen right now.
Yeah.
And
look
we
at
just
that
had
lavender.
Ooh, yum. How good is it? I'm only going to flick through it quickly, Carmel, because I know you'll want to stop and talk and look and analyse, but we won't. But we made a beautiful calendar, and it'd be our pleasure to share with you the link tonight where you can pre-order this calendar, or a similar calendar, I should say, because it's not this one, for next year. So
excellent.
All good shows like this require a little bit of input. That's our input for a little bit of sponsorship for us. Tonight, though, Carmel, it's all about tonight from here on in. So tonight we tackle the usual topics. We'll give you a bit of an update. I know you've got some info about Varroa.
I do.
I've got a little bit of around the grounds chit-chat from different news stories that we've picked up with overseas, which I think are interesting. You're going to do a bit of a deep dive on a topic for us this week. Where's that heading?
Florally.
Good.
Yeah.
Sounds perfect to me. Yep. And I've got some pretty interesting topics about beekeeping from other countries to go on with later on. And I'm still curious to know if anyone in the chat is going to be able to guess where the purest honey comes from on the planet. Again,
I'd say Antarctica, but they can't have bees there.
Come on a moment. Anyway, let me leave it at that. I'm curious to see if anyone's going to put in the chat where they think the most purest honey on the planet comes from. But Carmel, what's caught your attention lately? Let us know.
Well, I'm actually going to share the screen, and I've got a couple of things to share here.
Cool.
This is a very significant article. And the reason why this is significant, there's a video to watch. I'm not going to go through it, but look, here are the key points. It's now thought that the pest did not arrive via the Newcastle port as originally suspected. Now, this is huge that they're actually saying this.
Yeah, wow.
For the first time. A lot of us, as we've been watching the numbers and watching the spread and watching the map develop, a lot of us a long time ago realised, and especially the mite counts inland were much higher than the mite counts at the port. Like in the sentinel hives, they only found 2 mites, and that's what triggered this whole thing. So the sentinel hive did its job, and there's more than a suspicion, but anyway, obviously there's investigations going on. So, you know, the news needs to be careful about what they say, but they have categorically stated that it did not arrive via the port. More than 30,000 hives were euthanized. Now, we've only got a couple of days left if you want to get your hives euthanized, and I'll be sharing a video with you in a minute around that. And of course, we've got some beekeepers, some big beekeepers that are looking now for an exit, because some people are not going to want to manage Varroa. Basically, depending on what chemicals and treatments they allow us to use in hives, it could cost anywhere up to and around $100 to $200 per hive over the year to treat it. Now, there are cheaper options, but it depends on what they approve for us. So there'll be some beekeepers, while they've still got healthy hives, they're going to want to move on from this industry.
Yep.
The how do you say that? Virology, there you go, virology team, they are currently looking at the viruses that the mites are carrying. So there are some viruses, but not huge, like not big numbers of them. Yep. But that'll also give them additional information. And it does actually say, where is it? Further down, they talk about having to, oh, here we go. Where was the, no, maybe it was right up the top. Williamtown is where the epicenter, so that's where ground zero was.
Which doesn't end up being too much further north than Newcastle, checking it out on a map, Carmel, but it's obviously just as well it was able to be detected fairly quickly from one of the Sentinel locations.
Yes, and there are now proper federal and police investigations, and there are some penalty notices, and yes, there are 35 open investigations at the moment. So this is being taken very seriously to get to the root cause of how it actually happened. But this article has stated, and again, I'm not going to go through all of it. You guys can read it yourself. I'll provide the link, that they were brought in to the country. They didn't come from a ship. It goes on to talk about some different chemicals and stuff. So that's that article. The other one I wanted to show you is on Thursday night. I did not attend, but I've now kind of scanned this video, and I urge anyone who wants to, forewarned is forearmed. So basically, this is from ARBIC, which is our Australian Honeybee Industry Council, and this is a very, very, very useful video to watch. So the first part is about the transition, why they transitioned from eradication into management, the new zoning and how that's going to work, and the movement of hives. And so for those of us that are, this is obviously all applies to New South Wales, but for those of us that are not in New South Wales, if and when these Varroa do cross the borders, and we're hoping it's slower rather than quickly, a lot of these similar rules will, I guess, be put in place. So there's a lot of really helpful information in here for those of us that will be dealing with this in the future. At 18 minutes and 41, AgVic comes on, Agriculture Victoria, and talks about the rules and permits and BMAX, and they've also got a business resilience program, and that's for free, and they have stated that it's not yet in Victoria. Then ARBIC come on and gives, again, an overview of monitoring and reportments, and then talks about treatments and the registration. And basically what they're saying is, unless you have Varroa, don't bother getting any treatments yet. Don't, what he even said, don't hoard it like toilet paper.
Well, sometimes you got to say these things, Carmel.
Don't panic buy, like there's no need to do that. Yep. They are yes, there's no need to do that, and there'll be specific shops that'll have specific registration to be able to sell these products. At 42 minutes and 24 seconds, Emily from the New South Wales GPI, she's a tech person. She came on and talked about how to manage Varroa. So what to look for when your count's too high, when you don't need to treat, when you do need to treat, some stuff around treatment. So that was a techie kind of talk. And accompanying that is a QR code with a PDF document that goes through it in all the details. So as a reference resource, I thought that was very useful. And then in the Q&A section, which was at 51 minutes, they were talking about which chemicals had been okayed. And they are, and so as well as miticides and stuff, formic acid has been okayed, and they're working on oxalic acid being okayed as well. So there are going to be some more organic options out there. So there you go. Now, just some other very quick resources before we move on. Just want to remind you, this is also a free online training. I'm going to provide all of these links in the chat in a minute for you. So a free online training that Tokel College has offered. So again, it begins our steps in learning about this. Be aware, I love this. There's so many resources and links and stuff in Be Aware. So that's a great thing to look into as well. So that's me for now. I've got more links for you later.
Great update, Carmel.
I'm going to go bam. There it all is. So that's also the links I'll be talking about later. So you've got all of those. You can click on them as we go back in the chat and keep listening. But that's all there for you as your resources. And
it's a good, there's so many good starting points there. It's going to take people more time than we've got to give tonight to really become well and truly, being able to cover all of this. But thank you, Carmel. I've reached a bit further afield for what I want to share tonight, just some news articles and the like. I like to try to get outside of Australia where possible. And the first one is an article I'm going to tell you about, which I've summarised. The title is "Spike in Asian Hornet Sightings Could be deadly for British bees," say some experts. And this was only this was articles in September by the Washington Post. And it says that the United Kingdom is experiencing a significant increase in Asian hornet sightings, raising concerns about their impact on local bee populations. This year there's been at least 22 sightings in southern England, which doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But it's actually more than all other previous years combined. These invasive hornets feed on bees, potentially disrupting pollination of plants and crops. I was learning too, Carmel, that they've actually got the ability to, not the ability, but the intimidation factor that almost all pollinators tend to be scared and are less likely to fly and spend time around flowers. So their actual presence in the environment intimidates other pollinators, and therefore you don't see as many other pollinators and insects on flowers.
Wow, they must be really aggressive insects.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's the thing, is that they are more aggressive because there are other hornets and large wasps found across Europe and the UK which look more formidable, but indeed don't have the reputation of the Asian hornet. So they're pretty anxious about this. They've been found in France, about 20 years ago, and they believe that on years like this, and I've got a couple of weather-related stories, but years like this, which has been very warm over there, they blow over like high quantity of the pest in France, and they blow over the English Channel.
Well, our Australian hoverflies go from Victoria over to Tasmania, so
crazy thought, isn't it?
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just something that's popped up there. Sounds like it doesn't matter where you are on the planet, you're dealing with something that's a little bit unpleasant. So that's a thing. But I got another one, sort of similar sort of topic, which was it was an article actually from about a year ago, but doesn't matter because I really liked it. And it talks about how researchers at the University of Maryland have discovered something really interesting about their honeybees. And I obviously wonder whether this applies then to all honeybees.
Yeah.
In the past 50 years, the bees that are in their lab have been only living half as long as they used to back a long time ago. So they've got a shorter lifespan. And when I say a shorter lifespan, we're going from, say, 34 days down to 17 days now. And you could go, well, what's the story there? What could change in 50 years? But this is a laboratory conducting consistent beehive management over many, many decades. And, what's the problem here? What's the problem with shorter lives? Well, it's less time out there foraging, less nectar, less productivity, less honey. Wow. And it's a really big deal.
That's like 50%.
It's a huge drop.
Yeah.
It's just a staggering drop. And they don't know how this really plays out overall with the whole colony collapse, welfare of bees, but they were really pushing you to think about the fact that if they know and understand this, then they'll probably be able to find ways to lengthen the success and the life of bees if they learn to understand this. So they really admitted that there was a gap, a knowledge gap, that they've got to go and continue to research, as usually happens, but they're confident that this might lead to pathways which will help increase the length of a honeybee's lifespan.
Well, there's kind of three things that come to mind for me.
Go for it.
Immediately. One is we live in more of a concrete jungle, and so or we've got monoculture going on. So you have a feast and then a famine, a feast and then a famine, or except a lot of us now have wonderful gardens, but maybe the bees have to fly further, so they're wearing out. So sourcing, and not just honeybee, or this is about honeybees, but I wonder if it applies to all bees and insects and stuff like that. So they're having to fly further for food, not able to find as much. The other thing, of course, is their immune systems due to all of our pesticides and poisons and things like that. And I wonder if that then affects their genetics, because if they're not as healthy, if the queen's not being fed as good as stuff, maybe the genetics in the DNA that's being passed on is a bit faulty. And also maybe we're outbreeding stuff because we've bred for certain characteristics.
Well, to me, it's all in the genetics. And that's a big, bold statement, but I think that whatever the cause is, and it's probably causes, not a single cause, has resulted in the genetic shift, which now gives, the foraging lifespan of a bee has been reduced by half. Is that happening here in Australia? I don't know. I do not know the answer to that. But I thought it was really interesting just to reflect and think about that. You got another one?
Well, I actually wonder if bees with backpacks would be able to give you that information.
Well, that I don't know if that study is still continuing with CSIRO and where they're at with that, but it's a complicated task being able to track and follow bees. But that happens. I know
someone that was connected to that. I might be able to ask a question and see if they have any data around that.
Yeah, well, it'd be good to know. We were working on that some time ago, but we haven't been doing that project for a bit. But let me jump on to the last one.
Go.
And it's from the Belfast Telegraph, just only last month as well. The title is "The Beekeepers Stung by Wettest July on Record." They love the bee puns, don't they? Journalists. And it's saying here, unusually wet weather during July in the UK has taken a toll on beekeepers and honey production. The record-breaking rainfall hindered bee activity during their busiest nectar collection month, resulting in significantly reduced honey yields. Reminds me, Carmel, of the episode we did 3 or 5, 6 months ago, I don't know when it was, we talked about Fijian beekeepers and the fact that they're struggling because it just wouldn't stop bloody raining. It was washing the pollen away. So, yeah, that's where I sort of think back to.
So
Some beekeepers.
is this the tail end of the wet season that we had that they are now having the tail end of, or is this something else? Because we're meant to be having a dry season.
Where the heck's that? Well, and they've just had an extremely hot and dry summer across large areas. So the fact that there's now this obviously the rain at exactly the time that they didn't need it seems to be the issue. So I don't understand. On that too, pardon me, we'll talk about it later perhaps, but there's already early indicators of a La Nina next year for us here in Australia. That's already sort of being spoken of. I know we're still in the El Nino, but that'll break down and it's looking like it'll head towards a La Nina. Like we've spoken in the past, Carmel, what does that mean? I don't yet know, but we obviously reflect and think about how that might change our management pathways.
Yeah.
But back to the UK, some beekeepers over there are getting yields as low as 10% of what they're normally getting, and others are saying worst in 30 years. So that's pretty hectic, isn't it?
I can attest to that. The last 3 years have been tough for me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Despite all of that, though, they're pretty confident they'll restock and keep doing their thing, but obviously just yields down for this year. That's all I got for now, Carmel. How about what's going on with you in your apiary? Have you got a bit of an update there for us?
Well, besides the fact that I'm still melting frames, so a testament to get your jobs done in winter time.
You'll be right.
Because now I'm like, I have to be putting boxes on and I'm running out of foundation. So I need the wax for my foundation because I'd rather get my own than have to pay full price and go and buy it. Anyway, as you've been talking about the weather, it has been very challenging. And usually I'm religious and go like every 2 weeks this time of year, sometimes even closer. And we had a tricky week last week where we are here in Victoria. And so when I did finally get to the hives, I've now got 2 hives and a client's hives. One had almost capped queen cells and their mind is in swarm mode. Another one, there were queens hatching. Now, it didn't look like it had swarmed because there were still numbers in the hive. So I literally collected a virgin queen as she was coming out of the cell and got rid of a whole lot of others. And then another client's hive, the same thing. So I've now got 3 hives that are just, and it's not going to matter now. I can give them room. They've made up their mind. So it'll now be a battle of the wills to go. One of them I've done a split on.
Yep.
And the other 2, because where I am, and because it has been wet, but then we've had really hot days and then wet again. Yep. There's so many flowers, like the nectar flow. I literally, and I've shown you this before, but I pick up a frame and where are we? There we go. And when you turn it flat like that, the nectar is literally, I don't even have to shake it. The nectar literally showers out of the frames. It's a huge nectar flow at the moment.
Can't get much fresher than that.
No. So as a result, I've actually got my first harvest. So tomorrow I'll be going into the kitchen and I'll probably have about 120 kilos of honey. So I've got 6 boxes.
Well, from a day of 26 down to a day tomorrow of 15, it looks like a good day to be harvesting honey.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, make use of the rainy day, that's for sure. So what about you? What's happening in your apiary?
Not a huge amount. I've not got huge numbers of beehives to comment on anyway. The only thing is some people have been following my journey with my Slovenian beehives.
Yeah.
And I suppose I've actually got a question because, and you might know the answer off the top of your head, Carmel, but I forget these things sometimes. Can you have more than one opening legally, properly, playing by the code, all of those things, more than one opening on a beehive? And I'm just wondering, there's plenty of people listening into this, and I reckon some of them might be able to go, yes, no, very quickly. But I did only a quick little bit of research because the next time I go to my bees, I want to know whether I can open up my second entrance on my Slovenian beehive. I just can't remember the answer.
I know overseas it can sometimes be popular to have double entrances and stuff like that. One in the super and one in the brood. But I'm pretty sure here in Australia we're not allowed to. We're
And
only allowed to have one entrance. Oh, and Andrew's chimed in and said no as well. So I can't remember where I saw that though, but
And that's what I'm curious if anyone can remind me where that is. I've had a bit of a look around, not exhaustive, and I just want clarity on that. But what I've done with my bees in my new Slovenian hive, and if you've never looked at a Slovenian beehive, you've got to go check out what they're all about. So they're in levels. I won't say boxes because it's not quite the right terminology, I don't believe, but they're on levels. Um, and you slide the frames in and out from the back. So you open up, there's two doors at the back, one which it covers all of the levels, and then a little door at each level. And I've gone from one level now to a second level in my Slovenian beehive Carmel. So I've opened up some space there. I've moved up some brood and resources up the top, so I've sort of spread it out a little bit. I have put a queen excluder there though as well to keep the queen down the bottom. But I'm just curious to see how that goes. I'm still trying to learn and understand and be comfortable with the idea of the Slovenian beehive. But overall, it's an interesting system. You've got to be on top of your propolis management. But I really find them cool, and I'm not deterred yet, even though I found it a little bit challenging. Let's see.
so if you've got issues with propolis, I would get Carnolians or pure golden Italians. It's because if anything's got a Caucasian in it, you're going to get lots of propolis.
Yeah, and I'm going to Google it really quickly right now. I might have the answer in the next 30 seconds. But in Slovenia, where this hive system is traditionally, that's how they do it, they only permit and allow a particular subspecies, and I can't remember which one it is. I'll get back to you tonight with the answer to that. But the reason they do that is because it's a low propolizing beehive.
Yeah.
Carniolans, by the way.
Carniolans, there you go.
Yeah, a low propolis bee species, and they want to keep the trait of their honey. Actually, this is really common across Europe. I can't think of the one in France, black bee or something. They're all European honeybees, races of the European honeybees, but they're really big on keeping purity as best as you can of the different subsets of Apis mellifera. I find that fascinating, and they're really big on that in Slovenia.
They wouldn't like me then. I've got it all. But I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
What's the trigger for you for some new people watching? How do you gauge when it's time to add another box?
Yeah, sure. Good. That's a good point. So there's a few things. Firstly, it's a space issue. Like, what's the space like what's occupying the space that they've already been given? Is it slowly, or is it filling up quickly with content, be that brood, be that honey, be that pollen? Is there room for the queen to actually lay? If there's no room for the queen to lay, well, we're going to be starting to change her trajectory, her productivity trajectory. Don't even know if that's a term. I've just created it now if it isn't. But you're going to change the way she's going to be able to produce going forward.
Like honey bounding or something like that.
Yeah. And it's going to increase the likelihood of that colony actually wanting to swarm, because that's one of the key reasons they swarm, is that trigger at this time of year, because it's time to replicate the colony. That comes down to a bit of the space. But I just want to make sure I've always got enough room for the queen to continue to lay.
Yeah.
Room for there to be nectar to be stored and converted into honey.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a balancing act.
And what would then be the trigger for you to put the third space on?
Again, the same thing, Carmel. No, it's really the same. I want the queen to be able to go up to the second level, but for the third level, I'm looking for a clear sign, like what you were saying before. When you hold up the frame and you see nectar coming out, you know it's game on.
Yeah, they can build wax really easily. They can build foundation when there's a flow on. Yeah.
So if I'm seeing that very little room up top, I'm going to be thinking, well, it's time to give them the space so that they can start preparing at that third level, so that it is ready for nectar to go in. The beaut thing there is, like with this system, like you can take a box off if you want to on a Langstroth system. I can slide a board back in to restrict their access above. Now I've got to be careful how I do that, because I don't want honeycomb sitting there essentially, well, it's sealed. It is a sealed unit. I'm just cautious about how that works and how that interacts with the code of practice side of things by leaving honeycomb out impact. Well, no bees moving over it. I don't think that's really going to work. But I'm curious on how that goes going forward. I've got lots, no doubt, to report back on in the future.
Yeah. So my rule of thumb was always, when I add another box, and especially if it's in the brood area, I'll do always a bit of a checkerboard and bring honey up.
Yeah, good one.
But I wait for all of those frames to be drawn out so that the comb's built, and then there's bees walking around so the box looks full. Yeah. So, and then if there's a real dearth on, I will hesitate, because if there's no nectar coming in, they might not build wax.
Yeah, and you know what? This time of this particular year that we're having now, Carmel, with the burst of warmth, 3 or 4 days of cool, and often quite wet. It's a real tricky time because you want to give space, but I'm tending to err on the side of they can wait another few days. Yeah. As a general rule at the moment, because those days, if they're not flying consistently, they're back in the hive consuming. And I know the populations are pretty solid, but they can consume very fast when there's a large population. So it's tricky.
It is tricky, isn't it? Yeah. Yep.
That's beekeeping.
Yep. That is beekeeping. Absolutely. Well, shall we go into a deeper dive then about flows and flowers and all of that kind of thing?
Well, I've told you before, I don't feel like I've got amazing knowledge in this area, so I'm probably not on my own. Hit me up with everything you can.
So yes, my saying is, when the nectar flows, the hive grows. So being able to identify that tipping that frame over to see whether there's any, and it literally looks like rain sometimes. So ways to tell that you've got a nectar flow on is that the nectar dripping from the frame, but often you can smell it, especially at night time, coming from the hive when they're doing that dehydration process. But sometimes you might smell it on trees that are around you, especially the bottle brush at the moment. They have so much nectar. In fact, that's what I haven't shared. I might share that on Hive Buddy, is a recipe for bottle brush cordial.
What? There's such a thing?
Yeah. Bottle brush cordial. Where you can literally pick the flowers. There's so much nectar in them, and put them in water and let them soak for a while. You can do it cold, and you end up with this really pink. Or you can cook that, like make a tea out of it, but all of the nectar comes out. But the other thing I think is really important is, as you're driving around, there are certain trees that bring certain nectars, like the bottle brush I've just talked about. So I thought we might have a look at some flowers that are local to, well, my area at the moment, but I'm hoping that there's some common themes around all of Australia. And obviously I'm going to share again, but one of the ones that surprised me this year was, normally for beekeepers, the cape weed, is the pollen on that is such a trigger for swarming. And yes, there have been some swarms, but I don't think the cape weed triggered like it has in the past.
That you might be clearing up some queries I've had there, because I feel like there might have been an early burst of swarming.
Yep.
And that happened to me. But overall, I feel like it's been a bit slow.
Yeah, I feel that too. It has been a little bit slow.
I don't know if I'm making that up, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this looks colourful.
Yeah, let me talk about this. I can see there's a couple of comments and questions there, but I just wanted to share this with you. I found this on the Australian Museum, but I thought it was really useful because, and now these are just Australian natives, so not other flowers, but it shows you the months of when stuff flowers. So right now we're down here in October. So let me scroll down to October. And I've provided this link for you guys, so if you want to keep it or print it off. So we've got our brush or spiky. So these are, again, your Banksias, Grevilleas, Callistemons, which are the bottle brushes, gums, Melaleucas, all of that kind of thing. Your bell-type flowers. Then things like paper daisies or your petal daisy type flowers. And now this is one which can trip people up a little bit. I'll come back to this in a minute. And then it tells you what kind of animals like to feed on them at what times. But coming back to these ones, and this is with a keel of fused petals. So think of a pea flower. The pea has like the two petals that sit out flat like normal petals, and then it has a petal that's kind of in a cup shape that's sort of closed together.
Yep.
So hidden inside, and that's called the keel petal, and hidden inside that petal is a trigger arm with the pollen grains on it. And
Sure.
so when the insect steps on that, they trip the trigger, and the arm literally whacks up at this like and thwacks them in the face, basically. So it bang with force, this arm comes up and triggers the release of the pollen. And so quite often, if you've got grumpy bees, you may have something that's in flower that and this is a classic one.
That's climbing up and over all sorts of things, different times of year.
Absolutely. Yep. So if your bees are grumpy, you might have something that's got this keel type flower in it. Other ones, oh no, not that one. There, these ones, your bacon and eggs. Now, other trees that are in flower at the moment. So the bottle brush, which all callistemons really. And the reason I love these is there's so much nectar. So I know when the bottle brush come out, depending on how well they're flowering, I know there's a good flow on. I know that I'm going to need to be putting more frames in. This is where you may even get some honey, even though they're still focused on babies. There's just so much coming in when these, and I love these because they also flower in autumn time. So you get a double flowering of these. So you get a nice flow again towards the end of the season.
So I'm just trying to read between the lines here a little bit, Carmel. Is callistemon, in your view, a good indicator species in the southern states here that we're getting to a point where honey should be building up quite well? Is it a reasonable indicator species that there's nectar in the environment?
I guess for those people that have a flow hive, it might be the time that you can start putting the flow box on, and the bees can start working that. So it depends on how many.
I'm always curious about if there's other people here listening in would have a different plant perhaps in their area. Is there something that you go, when that's in flower, and of course every year can still be different. There's so many caveats to this sort of thing, isn't there? But you go, this thing's there, so that would mean that it's time.
Yeah, so this would be one of them. But for me, the main one is the sugar gums that come in January.
There you go. Yeah, good point.
But yeah, this is a I know when these come out that the hives are going to be doing well. Now, this is another one, which is quite often a street tree. And it's the white cedar, not an Australian native. Is it an Australian native? No. And it has these little purple flowers on it. So the bees like that as well.
Yep.
Now, these are in flower. They normally come out mid-November. They've come out early this year, so I'm not quite sure. They've been in flower for a couple of weeks now, which is really weird. And these ones have an abundant year and a not so abundant year, an abundant year and a not so abundant year. Someone said stringy bark and prickly box in Tassie is their key one. So these ones are having a not so abundant year where I am. Then another one. Now the nickname of this is literally snow in summer. So there's a few of these popping, which are really early. These are your paper barks, Melaleuca.
Yes.
And I have no idea why they're flowering already. But so the weather's doing weird things all round.
Geez, they're stunning though, aren't they? Gosh.
Oh, they are. They look amazing. Yeah. And the honey from that is it's got kind of it's a beautiful yellow caramel, and it's got a caramel type buttery flavor. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Now some other resources for you if you're interested in doing your, because again, flowering trees, I can't cover it all in 10 minutes.
No.
This is by the Ween Bee Foundation, and they have put together, if you're wanting to promote Australian plants, you've got New South Wales, and they've got like different areas in New South Wales, and they'll promote your native bees as well, Victoria.
Oh, wow. I reckon I checked this maybe a year
South
ago.
Australia. I know they've expanded it heaps.
They've really done a lot of work here. Yep.
Tasmania, Western Australia. Now, let me show you one of these so you know what I'm talking about. These are all free, people. These are all free, and each one is a PDF of plants that are native to those different regions. So if you live in those regions, you can promote. And I want to just show you here. Here we go. It's being very slow. Come on. I think I can. There it is. Whee! There's a really big chart.
Have a look at that.
There's a really big chart. Whether it needs the sun, whether it likes wet feet or dry feet. There's
and I like that part in the middle there. I can see it just January to December in the flowering. So if you're looking to create a diverse range of flowering options, you'd be looking at that chart for some help.
Yep. Whether it has pollen or nectar, the Ween Bee Foundation are doing amazing things. So I've provided you that link as well. So I think I'm going to stop there. You guys have got some homework to do tonight. But
there's a lot there. Yeah, wow.
There is a lot there. But yeah, look, if you're wondering, do I need to get into my hive? Don't I? Watch the streets around you. There's so much information on the trees that have been planted in our streets. So there you go.
Sensational. Well, again, thank you. There's a huge amount going on there, and you've certainly set us off on the right path with being able to learn a whole lot more. And if anyone's watching this and goes, oh, you've got to see this other resource, make sure you tell us about it. Keep us
Doesn't paperback flower multiple times a year? Sorry to cut you off. No, maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, well, look, it may well be the case.
Its nickname is Snow in Summer, so I don't know. Yeah.
Look, before I kick off on my final few points that I want to share with you all, Carmel, I just want to remind everyone about tonight's sponsor, the Hive Buddy Beautiful Bees calendar for 2024. Thanks to those of you that are watching right now that have already pre-ordered your calendar. It will be out later in November, in time for Christmas, so that you can have them for yourself or give them away as gifts. So I know how many people were so thrilled with their one last year, and were hoping that we were doing it again. It is here. It will be coming soon. It's not here.
Yay.
Pre-order it because it's away getting worked on as we speak. But I'll move on, Carmel. Do you know much about the unusual beekeeping tradition in the West Khasi Hills of India?
Oh, I know everything about it, of course. No, I don't.
Over to you.
No. All right, my time to learn. You share with me now.
No, let me try and do that for you. I would like to share because I have been doing a little bit of reading about this. Now, India's a big place. This particular area is just north of Bangladesh, not too far from like the River Delta region, but it's starting to get up in the hills. Now, they've got some interesting practices there, which I thought was something worthy of sharing with you. So they have a really interesting way of gathering colonies from the environment. which to me, it's a cross between swarming, catching swarms and relocating them in our speak, but they sort of look at it a little bit differently. So they collect bee colonies from the wild, but they are essentially swarms that they prepare, in our word terminology again, catch boxes, that they catch swarms and bring them home. So what they do, they look for small cavities. They build small cavities like in and around rock walls and in and around little cabins and in around areas which are hopefully dry. And they often would dig a hole in the wall big enough for a beehive, cover the front of it with some rocks and the like, but leave enough space for a small opening. And you can probably picture in your mind that would leave a little cavern or a little hole with a small opening for a bee colony that might be out looking for a new home to go. That's exactly what happens. So when they notice that a bee colony or a swarm has moved into that space, they will then, once they've moved into that space, they will then go back, put that colony, pull it out, put it in one of these woven baskets, take it back home and put it in a normal bee box. Similar, so you can sort of see why that. You can see there's a parallel there with like a catch box and bringing it home and what have you. Then they've got a few weird things though about all this. Those little cavities that I was just talking about, they put the stones in the front in order to make it nice and snug and everything to work well. They actually use mud and cow dung to block up the holes. Cow dung, of all things, to block up the holes. Don't know why that's the case, but that's just what happens. So the swarms move in, they go and get them, they bring them back home, and then a strange thing happens later in the year after they've collected some honey from them. So they might only collect 3 to 5 kilograms of honey from these hives, because after all, they are Apis cerana, so they're not European honeybees.
Yeah, they're smaller, the Asian honeybee, aren't
they?
Yeah,
so they're getting a different. The metrics are all a little bit different. So come later in November, December, after they've harvested, the bees leave. They just leave. And there's sort of 3 types of movements that bees are recognised to do. One of them is reproductive swarming, which we're familiar with. Like a swarming
where
beehive.
Half of the family leaves.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's migration, which is, seasonally predictable movement of colonies. And the third one is absconding, where there's movement away from a location due to it no longer being suitable or appropriate to stay there.
Right.
And they're not really sure they haven't worked out really what these bees are doing, whether it's in part they're absconding because the temperature differential and how things change over the season. But the locals sort of seem to think it's a migratory thing. But
so do they literally lose their hives every year?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So I'm going to use the word abscond. They might not like me using that word, but they literally abscond at the end of each season. Now I wonder, I don't know the truth behind this, Carmel. Are they taking too much honey? Are they making it too inhospitable that the bees are like, nah, this is no longer the right place for us? Or are they responding to the nectar sources and the physical environment, and they know where it's better to be? Anyway, something I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer to that. This research paper did not tell me conclusively what the story is, but they said, look, there's more to learn.
Fascinating.
As there always is with these things.
Yeah. What else you got? Anything else?
Yep.
I'm still waiting to hear about the purest honey in the world.
Well, have you got any idea, Carmel, where the purest honey in the world comes from?
I really don't. There's been some really good guesses. I mean, we did talk about Iceland earlier in the year, but no, enlighten me.
Well, we heard some good other guesses, but Pitcairn Island, which is you're looking at me funny. Pitcairn Island.
Pitcairn Island.
Well, I'd love to tell you a bit about it. Well, the Pitcairn Island is an untouched subtropical island environment. Think pristine waters, endemic flora and birds and marine life. It's volcanic, and it's in the South Central Pacific Ocean, a long, long way from anywhere else. It's only a small little island. It's about 5 square kilometres and only rises up to about 340 metres, but that's surrounded by cliffs. So put that in your thinking. Now, the history buffs in the room would be going, Simon, Pitcairn Pitcairn Island is historic, and a book that you must read, Carmel, is Mutiny on the Bounty.
Okay.
This is from my history podcast that I do. I'm just bringing a bit of that across to this. But it's a crazy story about how humans ended up on the Pitcairn Islands back in the late 1700s. It was really quite a wild story. Now, I'm not going to take you through that whole story tonight, but beekeeping was one of the first things that they brought to that island. So they do indeed have Apis mellifera there, and that's what they use for their honey production. So the closest land to the Pitcairn Islands is 2,575 kilometres away. So
Wow.
when you think impact, there's not much impact because of the sheer distance.
That's like from Melbourne to Cairns.
It's huge. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's huge. They've got no pests and diseases over there. They have no vehicles, trains, buses, planes, anything like that. So they don't have the issue of exhaust and pollution like that. So it's an incredibly green place. No roads, no factories, nothing like that. They're blessed with beautifully rich soil and tropical climate that you can grow almost anything you want there. So let me tell you a bit about their honey. And maybe, just maybe, we've got to try and source some of this stuff one day, Carmel. Firstly, it's light amber in colour. And it's just persistently sweet. And it's persistently sweet for a really obvious reason. And that's because the flowering plants, you're just going to think this is the medley of paradise. We're talking about guavas, papayas, passion flowers, mangoes, and rose apples. And because of the climate, it is quite often that across the whole year, there is good quality nectar flows. And it's diverse and beautiful. So it sounds like an absolute true paradise. If you knew the history story, which I held back on telling you about, you'd go, it's anything but peaceful, the history of that island. But it is an absolutely fascinating story, fascinating situation around their honey. Apparently, it's slightly thick because it's got the tendency to want to crystallise. And it's really notable, the tangy, tropical sort of flavours that we've already spoken about.
Well, interesting. I love collecting honeys, and I got one recently. It was a rainforest quince, and and you can literally taste the quince in it. So all of those flowers that you've mentioned from those fruits, oh my God, it would be.
How good does it sound?
Yeah, the guava and that would be yum.
Just
Yum,
epic,
honey.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm delighted to hear from someone who's been there, tasted that, and had a go. So please, if you've done so, you need to tell me, and I want to hear more about it. And I'm going to have to try and source some. Actually, I had a little bit of a look. You can normally expect if you order it, it's going to take months to get to you. There's only a shipment, I think, an island shipment once a month or thereabouts. So you've got to wait for the next mail service, and then it's a long run from there. That's Pitcairn Island, the purest honey. Arguably the purest honey in all of the world.
Arguably.
Well, I don't know. Someone's always going to argue, isn't it? There you go. Hey, I've got one last quick thing to share, and then we're going to wrap it up. Does that sound all right?
Sounds great. Yes.
So no doubt some of you have already noticed the trailer or the preview for the up-and-coming movie that is to be released in January of 2024 called The Beekeeper. Have you heard about this yet, Carmel?
The Beekeeper?
Yes, the movie, The Beekeeper.
No, I haven't. Ooh.
Well, gather round. Let me tell you.
Is it coming into cinemas?
It will be in early January.
Oh.
I can't wait to tell you a bit about it. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with actors, but the main person who's leading this one is Jason Statham, who happens to be the chap who fought off a massive shark in the Meg 2 movie. And he typically is the dude who gets around, muscles, guns, goes out there, vigilante and all of those sort of things. But he's got the movie called The Beekeeper to be released in January of 2024. So you might be wondering, what's this about? Are you wondering what it's about, Carmel?
I am, yes.
Well, I'll tell you more. Picture this, a humble beekeeper who's seen more than his fair share of stingers and stings. decides to use his unique set of skills to take down some nefarious folks. He's out for revenge. No, he's not turning bees into tiny assassins. He's just a bit of a vigilante.
I was going to say, is this venom warfare or something like that?
It's ridiculous, isn't it? But here's the twist. So beekeeping isn't just a pastime for him. I can promise you, you'll see bees and you'll see Jason Statham managing beehives in this movie. But he's actually part of a secret black ops unit called the Beekeepers. And they operate in the shadows doing jobs that no one else can, which is a tad ironic considering they're keeping bees in broad daylight, yet they operate by dark. Anyway, I can't imagine what all my fellow beekeepers here are thinking when we talk about Jason Statham being the lead character for The Beekeeper, the movie. But I just thought that was a bit of a laugh to finish on tonight, and
that is funny. That is
slightly
funny.
ridiculous.
And Andrew's posted the trailer for us in the chat, so we can have a look.
It's classy. I've been there, done that, Andrew. It is classy. Go and take a look. Well, I think, Carmel, it's time to wrap it up. Once again, thank you for coming along and filling us with great knowledge on your particular areas. Those that are watching can hang around. We'll have a little brief show chit-chat, as we usually do. And
no worries.
Go on,
I've
Carmel.
got to say, I've just posted all those links again for anyone that missed them. If you click on any or all of those links, they'll all open up, and then you can have a look at them later and save them as a resource. And
in the next few days, I'll send out an email to all those that registered to share those links with them so that you don't miss out that way either. What a wonderful show, Carmel. Our next one is on Tuesday, the 1st of November. We've already shared that link a couple of times. Make sure you register so it's good to go. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Always an absolute thrill. And Carmel, bravo. Awesome effort by you too. Thank you.
No worries. And thank you. And I'm going to go and order my calendar.
Oh, good work. And I'm going to order some Pitcairn Island honey. Take care all. Good night.